All right, wonderful. Well, hello again, everybody, and welcome. I'm Lucas Livingston with Chicago Hyde Park Village. I'm very excited for our presentation today on the independence in aging, the innovation in the world of mobility devices. We have a wonderful presenter, Craig Kennedy, lined up for us. Craig is the program coordinator and trainer with the Open Doors organization with more than 20 years of experience working with people with disabilities, the Disability Travel and Tourism, and with the Americans with Disabilities Act. Craig moved to Steamboat Springs, Colorado from the Adirondacks in upstate New York in 1994, where a skiing accident left him paralyzed from the waist down just 2 years later. He's a published author and the founder of CK Consulting, and with his wife Andy, a co-founder of the adaptive travel resource company called Access Anything. And Craig now lives in Knoxville, Tennessee area and is an avid traveler. And we're very pleased and privileged to have Craig with us here today to share his expertise with us and for you to ask your questions about accessible transportation and mobility devices, innovative technologies. And with that, I'll hand it over to Craig, and we'll take a sec to get the screen share going and dive right on in.
Thank you guys for joining me today. I love talking about travel and fun and mobility equipment and getting outdoors and all that stuff. So I'm actually really very excited about this. So I wanted to just start by telling you guys a little bit about myself, so you kind of know who I am. There's a bunch of pictures up here, and the basic message here is that I'm not your average wheelchair user. But I broke my back skiing 28 years ago, just over 28 years ago in Steamboat Springs, Colorado, as Lucas said. I had moved out there to be a ski bum, and I was skiing down from work with a big backpack on because I was actually waiting tables up on the ski mountain. Very cool job. And on my way down that day, I hit a flat spot, a jump that I didn't see, and I went flying into the air. And the end result was me going to the local hospital and then them putting me into a morphine induced coma, flying me to Denver, and then a flight for life helicopter over to Swedish Medical Center, where I spent 2.5 days in ICU before I actually stabilized enough to go in for surgery. And I went in for, I think it was 10.5 hours of surgery to repair 9 broken vertebrae in my thoracic region. Well, thoracic means chest in the medical world. So, of course, on my back, but I broke T3 through T11. And the worst of it was a burst fracture at T11. So that's kind of sent shards of bone into my spinal cord, and that's what did the damage. So I've been a T12 complete paraplegic, so it's only affected my legs. But I've been in a chair for 28 and a half years here about. And it's been an interesting journey to say the least. In the very beginning, I got to experience what a lot of people don't actually get to experience until you start aging and get into your older years, where you start maybe losing a little bit of your independence. And that is something that I got to experience when I was 20, 22, 23 years old. And it was really a shock to me, of course, because I was young and active and an athlete. And I felt you feel invincible at that age. And I found out that I wasn't. So I spent 2 to 3 months in the hospital, kind of learning how to just get back into life and gain some of my independence back. And I had a choice. At that point, I was getting out of the hospital, and I had two choices. Basically, I could move back to Steamboat Springs in the mountains of Colorado, which seemed, like a kind of a daunting task, to be honest. Being in a wheelchair up in the mountains with all the snow that they get. I mean, they get 300-400 inches of snow every year, and that seemed daunting. But my other choice was to move home with my mom and have my mom take care of me. And at that point in my life, I was not ready for that. As much as I love my mom, right? My mom's she'll be 81 this summer, and she still gets around like a bumblebee. She's awesome, and I still love her. But at that point, I was at 23 years old. I was not ready to go move back home. I had just got out of the house 2 years earlier, and that was not the decision for me. So it actually kind of helped me when she said, you could move home and I'll take care of you. That was actually meant to be a little push to get me to go back and move to Colorado and be with my friends who ended up, being really my family there and supporting me and pushing me to do a lot of the things that you see on the screen is because my friends encouraged me to get out there and try things, right? I couldn't move back to Steamboat and not be a skier. That's for sure. I don't think I could sit there and talk to my friends every day and have them tell me how amazing the skiing was, and I didn't get to be out there. So at the end of the end of the next year, I learned how to sit ski and kind of never looked back. And I've averaged about 70 or 80 days of skiing every single year since then. And even though I live in Tennessee now, I have this great deal where I get to go back to Steamboat for January and February every year and live with a friend, and I ski and I work out of there. Right. So I'm very lucky. Again, not your average wheelchair user, but hopefully this is a good thing. Kind of one of my main hopes for today was to kind of show you guys what is possible, what is still possible, as we get older, maybe lose a little bit of our independence, and maybe need some of the cool new mobility aids that are actually out there and helping people. I think it's kind of helping us be and feel younger, right? So I do want to tell a little bit about what I do and who I work for. This is my boss, Eric. This is a much younger picture of him, of course, but he founded Open Doors in 2000, and he also has a disability. He's standing there with a cane, but he actually has a rare disease that caused a tumor in his T4 level on his back, so right about here. And he is an incomplete paraplegic, and it's kind of a miracle that he can actually walk. On his right side of his body, he has no muscle, right? He can feel it. He's got hypersensitive feeling, but has no muscle movement on that side. So he has to swing his leg through when he walks. On his left side, he can move it just fine. He's got full muscle and everything. He's got no feeling, right? So he's a very unique disability, and he had to travel for work, had some really bad experiences after his accident, and decided he needed to do something about it. So Eric started this nonprofit with the idea that goods and services should be more accessible to people with disabilities in travel, transportation, tourism. And we have our fingers in a little bit of everything. We're based right there in Chicago. We have an office in Rosemont by the airport. You guys know where that is. And really the idea is to reach as many places in this world to make sure that goods and services are accessible, right? So about 60% of our business is in aviation. I just got back from Washington, D.C. doing some work at the airport there, but we work with about 60 to 65 air carriers worldwide doing training and acting as their disability experts. We do training for below the wing as well. So we actually are having a lot of success, especially with American Airlines, at training the people that are loading our mobility devices onto the plane and teaching them how to not break things. So that's one of the things we do. We do training for Uber and Lyft, which I'll talk a little bit about more. We do training for and sit on advisory boards for several cruise lines and airlines as well. So a little bit of everything. That's why I love my job. I get paid to travel. That's all I ever really wanted. And I do have a pretty unique perspective because I never really traveled more than 2 or 3 times before I moved to Colorado. And then I broke my back, and all of my about 500,000 air miles that I've flown in my life have been from a wheelchair. So I've got a very unique perspective and probably a different outlook than a lot of people do on what it's like to travel and what the challenges might be and how to overcome some of those things. So just a little bit about that. And Eric couldn't be with us today, unfortunately. He's out in Seattle doing some work with Alaska Airlines. Funny enough, I just mentioned them, but he wishes he could be here. And I wanted to just start by kind of touching on some of the things that we see. So Open Doors did the first ever, and we've done 4 now. We did the first ever market study on people with disabilities and where they go and where they travel and how often we travel and how much money is spent, what kind of issues we run into, that kind of stuff. So these are some of the things that we know from our study, the results from the older population that we surveyed. These are some of the things as we get older that we may be experiencing, right? Some partial hearing loss might be there. Same thing with vision loss, whether it's macular degeneration or cataracts. I know my mom had cataract surgery a couple of years ago, and she swears by it. Says she didn't realize how much she couldn't see, right? It was like somebody wiped the dirt off of her eyes. Reduced mobility, of course, I know exactly what that's like, right? I always jokingly say I do have reduced mobility unless I'm going downhill. And then I have increased mobility, of course, because I love hills. Going uphill, a little bit slower. But of course, and when it comes to travel, reduced mobility becomes a big deal because even though some of you may not use any mobility aid or a wheelchair of any kind in your regular everyday lives, when you get to an airport or a train station and you see how big some of these airports now are like small cities, and you have to walk 2 or 3 miles during your travels just to get to and from and then through the airport and from the taxi stand or from the rental car agency or wherever it is. There's miles of walking to do, and there are now services provided at airports that can help us with that. Again, even though we don't use these things maybe in everyday life, when you get to an airports can actually be very disabling for people that don't have disabilities, that just maybe have balance issues or have problems walking longer distances, that kind of stuff, right? And what we refer to maybe as a slower walker. And then, of course, as we get older, chronic health problems are going to be there. And those are things that we have to manage as well through everyday life and getting out. And oftentimes, whether we even feel like getting outside and doing something is affected by whatever chronic health problem we might be experiencing. So I know for me, I don't really get sick, but I was just down and out for a couple of days, boy, and I just didn't feel like doing anything. And that's not like me. I love being outside as much as I can. So that was even just tough on me for a couple of days being down like that. But chronic health problems as we get older can obviously be an issue, and mobility devices are going to be a big help there as well. So what does healthy aging look like? I know Lucas mentioned this term in his introduction, and the reason this is followed by this one, right? This is aging and disability, but how do we stay healthy and feel healthy as we age? And as we all know, some of the most important things are on this page. Exercise, right? Hoping that we get out and move a little bit kind of every day. I've thought for years that, as I get older and as I age, the more movement I have, the more movement I'm going to retain as I get older. So I'm trying to work out and stretch. And even if I'm not going to a gym or lifting weights, which I have to do later today and do my sit-ups, even if I'm not doing that, if I'm traveling and I'm on the road 150 to 200 days a year, I get my exercise at the airport, right? So instead of having somebody push me through the airport, I'm going to push myself through the airport. And if I'm in a parking garage, I may park a little bit further away so I can get my exercise for the day. And it's little things like that that just kind of keep my attitude fresh and moving, and kind of, that whole feeling of moving forward, which is really always a very good thing, I think, for everybody. So healthy diet, of course. I didn't learn this. I am 51 years old. I didn't really learn how important diet was till about 10 years ago, and started taking, healthy supplements and drinking a lot more water. And what are the 4 big things? We're supposed to get 7 to 8 hours of sleep every night, eat healthy food, drink lots of water, and exercise, for a half hour, 4 or 5 times a week. So good movement and good sleep is a big part of that as well. Friends and family, I think is super important. I don't know if you guys are familiar with blue zones. I don't know, Lucas, have you ever heard of the blue zones, right? These are areas in the world where there is a large population of centenarians, so people that live, up and around and past 100 years old. And what is really prevalent in all of these places is the friends and family and the social interaction. For instance, like in Okinawa, these 90 plus and 100 plus year old people will walk to their friend's house a mile or two several days a week just to have social interaction, right? Getting exercise, and they're seeing their friends. So, but most importantly, and I think why we're here today, and the most important thing for me every single day of my life is to have fun, right? So I don't think I've had fun yet today, but I got to figure out what I'm going to do to have fun, because that's what really keeps me going, right? There are priorities in life, of course, but I see it as, we have today and tomorrow and maybe next week, no matter how old you are, how young you are, I focus on right now, right? Because I don't know what's going to happen to me 2 or 3 weeks down the road. So what I am going to focus on now and today is making sure that I have fun. So that's the most important thing to me. Have fun every day. And then number two is get paid to travel. So, and getting paid to travel is also a lot of fun for me. So I really enjoy it. So travel is my specialty. That's what I love. It's what I really enjoy. I don't know where you guys are at in your travels, if you still like to travel and get out. But one of the main reasons I know to travel these days is to see family, right? Because families don't live in the same city anymore. 50, 60, 70 years ago, families all lived in the same town within a few blocks of each other. And it's just not like that anymore. Even, immediate nuclear families are spread all over the globe. And people want to go visit their kids and their grandkids and their great grandkids that are out there. So, travel is a great way to go see your family, no matter where they are. And you can get anywhere in the world in 24 hours now, right? And that's a big part of the reason that I do this kind of work, is because you can travel anywhere in the world in 24 hours. And I think everybody should have that opportunity, so I really like to focus on that as well. Cruising, if you haven't been on a cruise, I went on my first cruise a year and a half ago and it was outstanding. They are the first of the travel industries to really embrace the disability community and our older population. And they have so much access. It is a floating, accessible city. The cruise ship is, and then now, of course, one of the very popular things we see nowadays are river cruises. Right? I know my in-laws have been on 5 or 6 river cruises. So they're smaller boats. You keep your stuff on the boat. You sleep on the boat, right? The excursions are shorter and easier to get to. So something worth looking into if you like to cruise. River cruises are a smaller, more intimate kind of way to go see things. And I do promise I am going to get to mobility equipment, because all the mobility equipment, the last few slides, is how we're going to access all of this fun, is what I'm hoping. So airports, I talked a little bit earlier about wheelchair assistance. So if you go to an airport and you need some assistance, you're worried about the long walk, you can set up ahead of time, and you'll meet them right just inside the doors, usually off the curb before you go to ticketing, and you'll pick up a wheelchair. Somebody will take you to ticketing. They'll take you through security. They will take you to a shop or a bathroom or a restaurant, and then eventually they will take you to your gate and drop you where you need to be, so that you don't have to manage walking several miles, dragging your bags around and whatever else you might have to actually take with you. So a lot of assistance in airports. And the same thing with Amtrak. Train stations have what we call red caps. If there's a manned station, most of them have red caps, which help people with disabilities kind of get on and off the train. And the train is an amazing way to see the country. You see things from a train that you don't see from an airplane, that you don't see from a car. And I know especially on Amtrak, we have a lot of loyal older travelers now traveling on Amtrak, and they really like that slow pace. You're not in a big hurry moving through the airport. You're not going to miss a flight. The train's a great way to see the country for sure. And then Las Vegas, of course. And if you like to gamble, Las Vegas was the original accessible city. All right, everybody likes to go to Vegas. I've had my time in Vegas. I don't know if I'm going to go anymore. I've probably had too much fun in Vegas. But the last thing on here I want to point out is that almost everywhere you go, especially big cities nowadays, and especially if you're going on a cruise, there are scooter rentals right at the cruise ports or on the cruise ship sometimes, or at your destination, wherever you're going, you could actually rent a scooter. So again, if you don't use one in everyday life, but you're going to be walking around Las Vegas or walking around Paris or wherever you're going to be, a scooter is a great way to extend your day and extend the life of your legs, right, and your lungs and everything else, because the scooter will get you around. And it's not necessarily something you need, right? I know if you're anything like my dad and his generation, I tried to get my dad to get a hearing aid for several years. I said, Dad, you're losing hearing in your right ear. I said, why don't you get a hearing aid? He said, because my left ear works just fine. Right. That was his excuse. As his whole idea of, he doesn't want to be identified as having a disability. He's just getting older, which I understand. Right. I totally understand that. But as you get older and you're going to travel, right? Like my father-in-law, we finally got him a scooter. He walked with trouble for years and loves the scooter now because he can go on these trips and he knows he can get everywhere. He doesn't have to rest, every quarter mile and take a rest and sit down. The scooter will get him where he needs to go. And then the other thing on the right here, you can see a picture of cruise ship, and then there's a beach wheelchair down there on the right. So if you like beach vacation still, but you have trouble walking in the sand, which sand's very tough in wheelchairs, but these are special balloon tires, and these are available at a lot of state beaches and national parks and things nowadays, to get you out and see some things that might not be accessible by foot or by regular wheelchair. Okay, mobility devices. There's a lot of cool new stuff out there these days. I want to start with the rollator. You guys may be looking at me funny, like the rollator is not a great new invention. It actually is, but it is an innovation, because first we had the walker, right, with the tennis balls, and now we have the rollator. And the rollator is great because it's got wheels, it's got brakes, it gives you support while you're walking. It also has a seat that you can sit on, so you have a chair with you wherever you go. And then guess what? If you flip that seat up, you got a little bit of storage area under that seat as well. And these are, 100. Actually, you can probably get them as cheap as $69, $79. I think the real fancy Rolls Royce version maybe goes for 200 or 250 bucks. I would go with the cheap version if you're traveling, though, because they get broken a lot in the hold of the airplane. One little secret I am going to tell you guys: if you're traveling with mobility equipment, this is very important, especially by airplane. If it'll fit in the closet on the airplane, if it's a bigger plane of 100 seats or more, by law, they have to put your stuff in the plane. All right. And we're teaching the airlines this. They know it, but they don't practice it. So your rollator will be safe inside the plane, a lot safer than it will be underneath. Next to that is called a smart wheel or a smart hub. So if you're a wheelchair user at all, this is an internal hub. You can see the white part in the middle of the hub. And what it does is it creates and stores kinetic energy, right? So as I'm pushing, it's creating energy, so that when I need a little extra strength as I push, it kind of gives me a little power boost. It's like a power assist. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys, but what it's really made for is somebody like myself, but maybe as a quadriplegic, so I don't have as much hand in my strength in my hands or my arms. Or again, as we get older, we may not have as much strength in our hands and our arms, or maybe we have some arthritis or something we need to deal with. And this gives us the ability to feel like we're stronger, right? It gives us extra strength. To the right of that is known as a smart drive. So again, for wheelchair users, this attaches onto your axle bar. The wheels sit on the ground, and this is an engine. It's a motor that pushes you along, right? So for somebody like me, it's been in a chair for almost 30 years. My shoulders, in fact, I'm having a little bit of a shoulder issue right now. I'm trying to doing some PT and some exercising and lifting and stuff to kind of work that out. But as you get older and you've been in a chair for a long time, your shoulders break down, right? And insurance companies are actually starting to buy stuff like this because they found that it's cheaper than paying for shoulder surgery. So if you are a wheelchair user at all, or you have a portable wheelchair that you use when you travel, this is something that, again, insurance may even pay for you. I want to say they're $7,000 or $8,000. So insurance would come in really handy, but will help save your shoulders. And it's just a motor. You can turn it on. There's one version that has like a wristband that you tap on your wheel, and there's another, it's just a little joystick that you kind of run the motor with, that attaches to your chair. Another one at the bottom there, this is at the top of my list of things that I want. So this attaches to the front of a wheelchair, and it turns you into a moped. So for any of you speed demons out there, this is what you want. This goes 20, 22 miles an hour, I think, top speed, but you put some hardware on the front of your chair, and then this connects to the front of your wheelchair, raises your little wheels up just a couple inches off the ground, and turns you into a moped. A lot of fun. And then the last two pictures are two different versions of a Segway. I'm sure you guys probably know what a Segway is. They're not as popular as they used to be. But I did have a friend in Steamboat for a long time. He had been diagnosed with MS, and he got a Segway because he could stand up for a long time, but ambulating and moving, walking a lot made him very tired. So he would take his Segway all over town because he could stand up pretty much all day. It didn't really make him tired. And he would drive it right up to the door of the post office, step off, walk 20 steps, 25 steps to his post office box, and go back and hop on his Segway. He even had some boxes attached to the neck so he could carry things around, like some storage. It was very cool. And then on the right is a sit down version of a Segway. These are specially modified. You could call it a Segway wheelchair. I rode one in Salt Lake City years ago, made by a group called Segways for Vets. They were adapting the Segways for injured veterans, so for paraplegics or double amputees, to ride around on these. So these are some of the cooler new things to help you, like I said, kind of extend your day. On the bottom right there, you're seeing what's known as a smart cane. So this would be for somebody with visual loss or progressive visual loss. A normal white cane is something you tap back and forth to help to avoid obstacles, right? And it helps you walk in a straight line. The smart cane, if we get to a point where we have enough vision loss, this smart cane actually has built-in LiDAR, which is similar to radar, that detects things. So if there's if you're tapping, if there's an obstacle in your way, it vibrates in your hand, so you know that there's something in your way. They even experimented a few years ago with shoes, smart shoes that had LiDAR in them and a couple other things like that didn't really last. But the smart cane seems to be lasting so far. I think most people choose to use still a regular white cane, but the smart cane is another thing that is out there. So what are even more popular nowadays are portable wheelchairs and scooters, right? So for anybody with, just like I said, like my father-in-law was diagnosed with MS when he was 25, and he fought it his whole life. And now that he's 80, he's finally having to use a scooter. He's been using a scooter for about 4 or 5 years now, I want to say. He's got the one on the bottom left. All right. And you can see the picture next to it, little white thing. That thing folds up into a small, what looks like a carry-on bag. It weighs about 70 pounds, but it folds up, and he's able to get this out of his trunk and unfold it and set it up for himself when he's traveling. So these are super popular if you have any kind of mobility limitations, or again, you may not use one in everyday life, but if you travel a lot, this could come in handy. The one in the middle is the one that my boss uses. The seat comes off, the batteries come out, and then the drivetrain comes apart from the back as well. It also weighs about 70 pounds, but it comes apart into several pieces. So when he's traveling, he'll take that apart, put it right into the trunk of a rental car, or whatever he feels he needs to do. And then the power chairs above that, for anybody that uses a power chair, or again, if you not comfortable in a scooter, you need a little bit more support, or if you are in an everyday power chair, these are a great alternative because they fold up. You can see they're all folded up. They fold up and also fit into the trunk of a rental car. So super easy to travel with. They weigh anywhere from 40 to 80 or 90 pounds, and they run on lithium ion batteries. All of these do. The scooters, the wheelchairs, everything runs on a lithium ion battery, which are easy to charge and easy to take in and out. Yeah, so these are kind of the latest and the greatest as far as, and you can get this stuff at Walmart, Costco, right? You don't have to go through the process of talking to a doctor and getting a prescription and getting your insurance to approve it. Your insurance still may pay for something like this, but this is something you can also just go out and buy outright without a prescription, which is rare in the medical world. Usually you need a prescription to buy something like this. Oh, so the last thing I want to talk about transportation wise is kind of some of the new stuff going on with Uber and Lyft and taxis. So Uber in several major markets, bigger cities, has a program called Uber Wave, which is a product that was actually started by us, and it stands for Wheelchair Accessible Vehicle. So anybody who is trained by us and actually has a vehicle that could take a full-size power wheelchair, all full put together and everything, would have this. And there's only a few cities right now that have it, because this is one of the issues with our transportation networking companies, Uber and Lyft, is that how can we require people that are driving with their personal vehicles to have a wheelchair accessible vehicle, right? It's an ongoing issue that we're trying to help deal with. But for now, we do have this in some cities. And then Uber Assist, what that is you also would go through a training program through us. And it simply means that you have a little more empathy towards our older travelers, who may have some limitations or challenges with, hearing or movement or whatever it might be. And they're willing to go the extra mile to help that person, right? And Lyft has a similar program. It's called Lyft Assisted Rides, where they'll be informed ahead of time that they have a customer who needs a little extra help. They're willing to actually come and meet you at the door and help you through the door, help you down to the vehicle, help you into the vehicle, and even help break down and put away, store your mobility device that you may have with you. So Uber and Lyft are doing some good things these days, and they both have programs that will go that extra mile for people. And then taxis, obviously taxis have been affected greatly by the TNCs, right? There's been a big shift. They've been complaining about losing business. And what do they do with all these taxis? So a lot of taxis are being repurposed. In some cities, you can actually call an Uber and you might be dispatched a taxi that actually is also taking Uber rides. So that is something that's happening as well. And then the other big thing that taxis are being slated to do is non-emergency medical transportation. So you got to go to the doctor to get a prescription refilled, or you have to go to PT, right? I'm sure with you guys, you've probably been through some different bouts of PT like I have in my life for sure. I rehabbed a rotator cuff just last year, in fact. So this non-emergency medical transportation is also something that taxi companies are now providing. So, all right, I've been talking a lot. Hopefully you guys got some good information out of that, Lucas. I hope that was kind of what you were looking for. And I'm happy to answer any questions you guys might have, and whether it's about disability or travel or mobility devices, feel free to ask me whatever you want.
Absolutely. Thanks, Craig. Thanks. That was really, really great. Very interesting slides, great content, spot, really helpful, useful information. There are a few questions in the chat. Everybody, just a reminder, yeah, you can, if you have questions, you can absolutely just type them in the chat, or you can raise your hand. If you know how to use the reactions in Zoom to raise your hand, you can do so, and we'll get to you. Otherwise, I'll try to watch visually on screen to see who's raising their hand, if you don't know how to use the reaction, and we'll get to that. But a couple questions we've had at the beginning already. Yeah, Mitch is asking us, what is a Zimmer frame?
I'm not sure what that is. Maybe I said something that you misunderstood what I said.
Well, it wasn't something that you said. It's something that like I heard on I think it's a British term, and I've seen it in print or on TV shows. Somebody says, my dad was using a Zimmer frame, but we think we're going to get him a rollator. So I think it's like the non-wheeled things, but I wasn't sure. I thought maybe you.
So I just looked it up, and it looks like a Zimmer frame is a cross between a walker and a wheelchair. It's actually got footrests on the front of it. So let me see if I don't know if it'll actually show you this or not. I don't think it will with my background like that. But if you Google that, you'll see it looks like a walker that also has fold down armrests. And then it also has a footrest on it. So if you sit down, you can actually put your feet up. And you can actually have somebody push you in it. Yep. I just learned something new. Thanks, Mitch.
Thank you.
I hadn't heard of one of those before. I thought I'd seen them all.
And Steve has a question in the chat. Does Chicago have wave?
Yes, absolutely. So you're in luck in Chicago. Chicago is one of the only cities in the world where you can fly into the airport and you get a wheelchair accessible taxi within 15 or 20 minutes. And the reason for that, you'll never guess who started that. It was Open Doors organization. Eric used to run 450 wheelchair accessible cabs. There's a service called Open Taxis, right? Where Open Doors, this was called Open Taxis. And he said, the mayor doesn't really like him. So he said something that the mayor didn't like, and she took the contract away from him after 7 years. So that's the truth of it. But we were running 450 cabs in the city, and a lot of them are still in operation. So the only other city in the world that's true is London, England, and that's because all those domed cabs, right? The London cabs, they all have ramps that fold out of the floor, and then the door actually unhinges all the way. You can unstrap it, and it'll open 180 degrees, so it gives you a lot more clearance getting into those. But yeah, Chicago, you're in luck. They do have Uber Wave in Chicago.
I see Kathy has her hand raised. You want to unmute yourself, ask your question?
Yes, I have a friend who's in a wheelchair and has taken a plane and is reluctant to do so now because her wheelchair has been damaged so many times. Now, does it depend on which airline you take, or are all of them being up to speed in terms of not damaging your equipment and not dropping you as they try to help you come on?
This is a tough subject because there's a lot going on, and we know there's too much damage going on. Does your friend have a regular manual or a powered wheelchair?
A powered wheelchair.
Yeah. So, and that is the biggest issue, right? So what the industry is moving towards, I'll give you a couple things here. What the industry is moving towards in the future is only allowing her. So if she's got a power chair, she'll need to know the dimensions of it. And when she books her ticket, she'll plug the dimensions in, and that'll tell her which aircraft she can actually fly on, because it'll actually fit. So what's happening, I'll give you the truth, what's happening behind the scenes is that in most airplanes, power wheelchairs are too big to get in there, so they have to tip them on their side for a few seconds and drag them in, and then tip them back upright. That causes damages in several different ways. The other problem is that power wheelchairs were not meant to fly, and airplanes were not meant to carry power wheelchairs, period. They were never built that way. We're taking them anyways. And it's not the airlines that are actually breaking the wheelchairs, it's the airplane. Because when you have all that stuff in the bottom and underneath in the airplane, and you take off and land with 2 G's of force, you know what happens when you land? Everything goes boom, and it hits the ceiling, right? And that's when stuff gets broken. So it's not the airline's fault. We're learning how to fix that. American Airlines is going to start strapping chairs down. So if she's going to travel again, my first thing would tell her to book with American. We've been doing a ton of training with them about taking breakable parts off of her chair and taking them on the plane with her, right? She probably doesn't know that she can take her headrest, footrest, joystick, whatever will come off of that chair, she can take it on the plane with her for no extra charge under the law, right? So we're starting to make waves, and the airlines are being pushed, and they're going to be started to fine heavily next year for broken equipment. So they are looking for solutions. The other solution I would say for your friend, if she's worried about her high end, if she's got a high end expensive power chair, would be to purchase, or see if insurance will help her purchase one of these portable chairs that I just showed you, because they're a lot easier to travel with and a lot easier to replace and a lot less expensive.
Thank you. Good information.
Yeah. Yeah. So that was a lot of information, I know, but that's a big subject. But that is like right up my alley. That is our specialty, is airline travel.
Yeah, there was a question in the chat from Dana. Do you know of any organizations in Chicago that assist with mobility devices if one's unable to afford, or if insurance does not cover that?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm going to ask. I will ask about that. If you want to put your email address in the chat, if you're willing to share that with me, I'd be happy to send you some information on that. Chicago.org to help pay for
another
device.
We're also kind of lucky in Chicago. Another great local resource that we have here, Access Living.
Yep.
People familiar with that, I just put the link in the chat there, and that's definitely a great organization that supports people with disabilities in all aspects of living. So check out Access Living.
Yeah, and then the other thing always to look at in your area is whatever independent living center you have in the area. I actually still sit on the board for one out in Colorado, you know, because I lived there for so long and I'm still dedicated to them. But Independent Life Center, where we are in Colorado, we actually have a little storage unit. As people donate old equipment, we keep it. And if people need something, we give it to them. And I want to say that we might actually, at Open Doors, we might actually have a closet full of stuff as well. And that's what I'm going to check into.
Right. Let's see. Yeah.
Good questions. Really good questions. Show that portable chair again. Good for the plane. Yes. Hold on just a sec. There we go. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And if you Google portable, lightweight portable powered wheelchair, you'll get dozens of them. Yeah.
I'll
Mr.
pass
Google
that
will
information
take you.
on. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Happy to help with that. And you know, and again, if you're, and I'll let me put my email address in the chat. And if you guys have any questions or you ever have issues while you're traveling, please feel free to get a hold of me. I know I have contacts at every single airline. And Catherine, just to re-answer your question, I think I skipped part. It's not depending on which airline you fly. It's all airlines. That's the DOT regulation called the Air Carrier Access Act. So when you're on an airplane, you're not covered by the ADA, you're covered by the DOT regulations. So they require any airplane of 100 seats or more, then they have, if it'll fit, they have to actually allow a manual wheelchair actually in the closet. And there's a little sign on the door that says for priority stowage of mobility equipment. Right. So if you're ever traveling and somebody says, no, you can't put your stuff in there, you ask for a CRO. I'm a CRO. I train CROs for airlines. It's a complaint resolutions official, and they're the expert in the law, so they can help protect your rights if you're traveling. Right. A lot of people that travel with a disability don't know anything about the Air Carrier Access Act, and that's why I like to educate about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Yes. Something I think that I think just the idea of being able to rent a scooter or some other a powered wheelchair or other type of mobility assistance device, I think that opens up so many doors for us. And as we may, where we live, we may have made so many accommodations around us, and we feel we don't necessarily need something to just get around our own neighborhoods. But if we go to a destination, we might be hesitant to go to a destination, but maybe we love to travel. And so how can we find out, how can we easily find out how to rent a mobility device when at a place not where we live, right? Are there certain websites to go to? What about like travel?
It depends. The biggest provider out there is Scootaround. And Scootaround is in a lot of places. They're in Las Vegas, they're in the cruise ships, they're in a lot of places. So that is one resource. But what I'm finding is that a lot of individual resorts, state parks, national parks, you know, actually have them that you can rent, or even they'll loan you for free. So a lot of it, if you're going, say you're going to some place in central New York that's a historic site, I would go to their website and click on the little blue and white wheelchair guy and see what they provide. And a lot of places are providing those now, because you guys may not know this, but we have the second largest aging population in the world, right next to Japan. And for the last 10 years, 10,000 people have been turning 65 every day in this country. And that's going to happen for another 5 years, right? So our aging population is growing, and the tourist industry knows it. And they're starting to really accommodate for that as well, because it's not just age, because unfortunately with age does come disability as well, right? Whether we want to admit it or not. But with age does come disability. So it's multiple things that we've got to deal with. And we're working on the disability side of things and on the aging population side of things, because they go hand in hand, of course.
I have a question, Lucas.
Please, Don.
Yeah. What if I'm thinking of an individual where their problem is simply getting down 2 flights of stairs in order to enter the world? So 80-year-old had a stroke in a simple wheelchair. So to get down 2 flights of stairs, generally she has to call the fire department, and then they come out and take her down the stairs, and put her in their own chair, take her down the stairs. She's at the curb and she can do what she wants, and when she gets home, she has to call them again. So in our community, they're willing to do that, but the limit is about 3 times a month. So it's not taken advantage of. And other than that, you can pay $300 and they'll come anytime and do it. Do you know any assistive device to help people get down a set of chairs if they're in a wheelchair without, installing, a low income person, you're not going to install a $20,000 electric railing with a lift.
No, yeah.
I know there
that
are
is
devices. There are
that is a
devices that
unique.
to climb stairs with you sitting in them.
There are, but the powered ones are very expensive. I mean, I'm interested in knowing more about the living situation, because if the person has a disability and they're in that building, yeah, I don't know. It depends on what's the situation, if they've been there a long time. But there's obviously no elevator.
Yeah, there's no elevator in a lot of Chicago. Well, 2 and 3 flats, there aren't elevators. And sometimes, the cheap apartment is the second floor, where they can get a free apartment from relatives, but it's not the first floor apartment, that kind of thing. Yeah, I was just trying to think, is there like has anyone invented a little pulley system that you could attach to a wall and the back of the chair to help unwind the rope and it lets it down and anything like that?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head that you could do independently that would be really inexpensive like that. But I know, like in skyscrapers, and even Amtrak has them on their trains, there's a thing called a striker chair. It's called an evac chair. It's a tall chair, and on the back of it, there's wheels on the 4 wheels on the bottom, right? But on the back of it, there's a track that folds out like this, and it's got grooves in it, and it's got built-in resistance. So as you hit the stairs, this track rolls down the stairs, right down the edges of the stairs, down to the bottom, but you still would need assistance. God, I don't know. They're $2,000 or $3,000, all I want to say, something like that. I'd have to do some more research into that.
Thank you.
Any other good questions, guys? Any other questions for me?
One thing I just want to remind our Hyde Park Village members or friends of Hyde Park Village that we do have on our website the referral database, and under the member resources tab on our website, CHPV referral database. And there, if you're a member, you can log in and browse all sorts of great third-party vendors and such. And one category we have is the third-party transportation, which includes links to Uber Wave, Lyft Wave, the PACE paratransit and taxi access program in Chicago. So a lot of great things there. And if you're not a member of Park Village, you can contact us and we can share that information with you. So yeah, I just wanted to make sure that our members are reminded that we have that there. Great. All right, wonderful. Yeah, I like one of your early slides, Craig, where you mentioned the just the spending power of people with disabilities. I just remember it's probably 15 years ago or so now, a long time ago. Yeah, I was listening to Eric give a presentation, and a lot of great talking points about that, which really helped me and helped so many people along the way, just to make a case for accessibility for people with disabilities. Yeah.
And it's helping us a ton as well, making a case for the airlines and the travel industry, because they care about money. I can tell you one of the major airlines that I work with spent almost $7 million last year on replacing mobility equipment. $7 million. So they care. They're listening for sure. So we're trying to get the overall number, honestly, of damaged equipment these days, airline wise, is 1.4%, which doesn't seem like a lot, but that's still thousands of, what we call body parts. Cause I say mobility devices are like arms and legs. And if you break my mobility device, when I get to my other side, you just broke my legs. That's what I tell people. So it's still too many, only 1.4%, but I mean, the airlines are carrying well over 100,000 mobility devices a year. Each of the major carriers is. So, and that's just power chairs, manual chairs, and scooters. That's not walkers, rollators, CPAP machines, any other stuff that's getting damaged. But yeah, no, the numbers, people with disabilities do travel, and we have power just in numbers. You know, I think the number people with disabilities travel by air once a year, I think, to the tune of, I want to say it was $14.5 billion. So imagine if everybody traveled twice a year.
Wow. All right. Well, and yeah, and so much dense content, great content in this presentation. I just want to remind everybody that we are recording it and we'll put it up on our YouTube channel. So you can visit it. Usually takes me a few days, maybe a week or so. I'll high prioritize this one. And then yeah, just head on over to chpv.org, if that's for Chicago Hyde Park Village, chpv.org. And then at the top of the page and at the bottom of the page, you'll find a link for our YouTube channel. So it'll appear on there. And also there are lots of other great past presentations you can check out there as well. Fabulous. Well, if there are no other questions, I don't see any others, but lots of really great and well presented information. I think, yes, really exciting stuff here. And yeah, well, and thank you so very much, Craig, from the Open Doors organization. It was a real pleasure having you here today.
Thanks for having me. It was great.
Thanks everybody for joining us. And yeah,
remember, everybody, get out there and travel. Go have fun today. If you haven't had fun, make sure you have some fun today.